A rich CEO didn't believe in miracles, until he woke up in a hospital and saw his three saviors. What happened to him, and who those three were, shook the world. One morning, the world's most powerful CEO opened his eyes to the blinding white ceiling of a hospital room. Confused, weak, and aching in places he didn't recognize. William Carter blinked slowly, trying to remember how he got there. Machines beeped steadily beside him, a faint hum of life, support systems keeping the silence company. The crisp linen beneath him was unfamiliar. His head throbbed, his chest ached, and his mind, foggy and fractured, searched for clarity. He tried to move but pain gripped his ribs like iron. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. But dreams don't smell like antiseptic. Dreams don't have IV drips. And dreams don't come with memories you can't quite reach. He was alone. Or so he thought. Just then, the door creaked. Light footsteps echoed across the tiles, and three small silhouettes appeared in the doorway. At first, he squinted, unsure if they were real. 3 children, no older than 10, stood staring at him with eyes wide open. One clutched a torn book. Another held a small teddy bear with one ear missing. The third held his hand. Gently, silently. William Carter, a man who had built empires, who had once bought and sold companies with a single call, was now speechless at the sight before him. These weren't his kids. He didn't know their names. Yet somehow he felt something. A strange warmth. A whisper in his soul. Something was different. He tried to speak, but only a whisper escaped his dry lips. "Who are you?" The smallest one looked up. Voice trembling but firm. "We're the ones who found you. You were lying in the street. Bleeding. People walked past. But we didn't." William's eyes widened. His mind raced. The accident, the storm, the empty road, flashes returned like broken film. A screech, a fall, darkness, then nothing. They saved him. 3 children. Strangers, but why? He had spent his life believing in logic, data, money, and control. Miracles were for the weak. Faith was for the poor. Empathy was a luxury he couldn't afford in boardrooms. But now, lying helpless in a hospital bed, gazing into the innocent eyes of 3 children he didn't know, something inside him cracked. For the first time in his life, William Carter felt small. And maybe, just maybe, he was about to learn what real wealth looked like. William Carter stared at the ceiling for hours after the children left the room. Doctors came and went, checking vitals, adjusting wires, talking in coded medical terms he didn't care to understand. But none of that mattered. His mind was stuck on those 3 little faces. Who were they? Why had they helped him? In a world where no one had ever lifted a finger for free, why had 3 children saved a man they didn't know? He closed his eyes and drifted into a shallow sleep. When he woke, the sun had gone, replaced by the soft glow of a single bulb overhead. The hospital room was dim. Quiet. Too quiet. Until he heard the shuffling sound outside. The door opened, and the same 3 figures stepped in. This time, a nurse followed them, smiling politely. "They've been coming every day. Just sitting here quietly, watching over you. We thought maybe they were related." William tried to sit up, groaning in pain as he adjusted himself. "They're not," he whispered. "I don't know them." The nurse looked surprised. "Well, they certainly act like they know you." The children moved closer, settling on the edge of the bed and the floor beside it. The smallest one, a girl with dirt on her cheeks and shoes 2 sizes too big, handed him a drawing. It was scribbled with crayon. A stick figure lying in the street, and 3 little ones standing around him like heroes. "I drew this," she said, proudly. "That's you. And that's us." He took the drawing with trembling hands. For a man who had sat at tables with presidents, this moment felt more important than all the deals he'd ever signed. "Why did you help me?" he asked. The boy, taller than the rest, shrugged. "Because no one else would." That answer haunted William. The girl continued. "We live near the alley. Mama says to never take from people, but never ignore someone who's hurt either." "Where's your mama now?" he asked. The girl paused. "She went to sleep and didn't wake up." Silence. Pain that wasn't physical hit William in the chest. "And your dad?" The older boy spoke. "Don't got one. 3 children. No parents, living in the streets, and yet, they had rescued him. A man they had no reason to trust." "What's your name?" he asked softly. "I'm Lily," the girl said. "I'm Max," the taller boy said. "And I'm Theo," said the smallest one, his voice barely louder than a whisper. William nodded. Their names were etched into his mind like stone. "I'm William," he said, even though he knew they already knew. He was famous. Or infamous, depending on who you asked. They didn't seem impressed. That was new. Over the next few days, they visited again and again. They brought food, crackers, juice boxes, once even a slice of old bread. They shared stories, told jokes, drew more pictures. And each time, William's heart softened. He learned that they lived in a broken shelter, down the alley behind the hospital. That they took care of each other. That Max watched over the others like a father. That Lily cried at night for her mom. That Theo hadn't spoken a word since the day he watched his mom taken away in an ambulance and never come back. Until the day he met William. "You made him talk again," Lily whispered one evening. "You reminded him people can still wake up." William blinked. That line pierced something deep inside him. One evening the hospital administrator visited him. "Mr. Carter, we need to talk about your release. You're healing fast. The bills have been covered by your office. Would you like to return home?" Home, a penthouse 48 floors above the city, marble floors, glass walls, staff waiting with every command. But it didn't feel like home anymore. "No," he said. "Not yet." That night, he asked the nurse to bring the children something warm to eat. A doctor offered to look at them. And William began making calls from his bed, quietly pulling strings he hadn't touched in years. A week later, when he finally stood outside the hospital, dressed in fresh clothes, cane in hand, the 3 children stood beside him. "I want to show you something," he said. They followed him, confused but trusting. He led them down a quiet street to a small house, not big, not fancy, but safe, clean, warm. He handed Max the keys. "It's yours." Max looked up stunned. "What?" "I bought it. For you. For all of you. No more sleeping on cold floors." Lily ran to hug him. Theo cried. William didn't. But inside something broke again. And this time it was the wall he had built around his heart. He didn't stop there. He started a foundation in their name, the MLT Fund. Max, Lily, Theo. Its mission: shelter, food and education for street kids. Within weeks, it became one of the most funded child welfare programs in the country. And as the press began circling, as cameras tried to find angles, William stood before them at a quiet press conference and said, "I used to believe money could fix everything. But then 3 children with nothing gave me something priceless. They gave me faith." He paused. "And now I believe in miracles." The world heard him. But the children only smiled. For them, it wasn't about miracles. It was about doing what was right. They had saved a man the world thought needed nothing. And in return, they gave the world a version of him that had never existed before. The media couldn't get enough of the story. A billionaire CEO. Saved by 3 orphan children, choosing to stay with them, building them a home. And starting a foundation in their name. It was the kind of narrative that sold headlines, boosted ratings, and pulled at the hearts of millions. But William Carter wasn't interested in applause. For the first time in his life, he didn't care what the board thought, what the markets said, or what the world whispered behind his back. He had spent a lifetime controlling outcomes, predicting trends, and calculating every move. But this new chapter of his life was uncharted, raw, and real. And it was no longer about control, it was about meaning. Max, Lily, and Theo settled into their new home with the kind of joy that could only come from a life that had known suffering. William visited every day. He'd sit on the floor with them, help with homework, listen to their stories, and learn the kind of things no business school ever taught. He was discovering how little he truly knew about people, and how much he had missed out on while chasing numbers. The MLT Fund grew faster than expected. Within 3 months they had opened shelters in 5 major cities. The waiting list of kids needing help was endless, and for the first time, William Carter felt overwhelmed, not by pressure, but by purpose. He hired people who genuinely cared. He invested his time, not just his money. But with growth came questions. Investors in his original companies began to worry. Shareholders demanded meetings. Board members wanted to know why he wasn't showing up to quarterly calls. "You're distracted," one of them said over a video call. "I'm present," William replied coldly. "You're letting emotion cloud your judgment." Another added. No, he said, leaning forward. For the first time in my life, I'm letting emotion guide my judgment. And that's the difference between building something that lasts, and something that only profits. He didn't wait for their response. He ended the call. But not everyone was pleased. One rainy afternoon, William was at the shelter with Max, teaching him how to read a storybook. Lily was busy coloring. And Theo was humming a tune near the window. A black SUV pulled up outside. A man in a sharp gray suit stepped out, umbrella in one hand, briefcase in the other. He entered without knocking. William, he said. We need to talk. It was Alan Pierce, William's oldest business partner, and CFO of his main corporation. I've been trying to reach you. The board wants answers. William stood slowly. They can wait. No, they can't. Stock is dropping. Investors are losing confidence. They think you've lost it. I have. William said plainly. I lost the version of me that only cared about winning. Ellen frowned. You're letting 3 street kids derail $1 billion empire. William stepped closer, his voice calm but sharp. Those 3 street kids saved my life. And now I'm going to spend the rest of it making sure no other child has to sleep on concrete, while people like me walk past. Alan tried to argue. But William raised a hand. If they want to remove me, let them. I'm not going back to who I was. And with that, he walked back to Max and finished the story. The news broke the next Tatar steps to WNAS CEO. The headlines were brutal. Speculation flew. Midlife crisis. Mental breakdown. Spiritual collapse. But William didn't flinch. Because while the world was obsessed with the fall of a tycoon, he was witnessing the rise of something far more important. Hope. In the months that followed, something extraordinary happened. Other CEOs reached out. Quietly at first. Then publicly. I saw your story. One said. It made me rethink everything. I visited one of your shelters. Said another. Changed my life. A ripple became a wave. Donations poured in. Volunteers signed up. New shelters opened. The MLT fund became a movement, and William. He became its quiet heart. But life wasn't done testing him. One evening, Max didn't come home. Lily waited on the porch. Theo cried. William called every shelter, every contact, every favor he had. Hours passed. Then the phone rang. Max had been hit by a car while helping an elderly woman cross the road. He was alive. Barely. William rushed to the hospital, heart racing, mind spinning. He sat beside Max's bed, holding his hand the way Max had held his weeks ago. I'm here, he whispered. You saved me. Now it's my turn. For 2 days Max drifted in and out of consciousness. Doctors weren't optimistic. Lily refused to leave the hospital. Theo clung to William's arm, silent but strong. On the 3rd night, William knelt beside Max and whispered. You once said people passed me by. But you didn't. You stayed. You changed me. A tear slid down his face. I don't believe in miracles, Max. But if they exist, please let this be one. The machines beeped, steady, then stronger. Max opened his eyes. The first word he said was, home. William laughed through his tears. You're going home soon. It was the 2nd time in William Carter's life that something cracked wide open in him. And this time, it was the final layer. He didn't just believe in miracles now. He was living inside one. The storm that nearly took Max's life had passed, but its aftermath lingered in every heartbeat William Carter felt when he looked at the boy. Max was recovering well. But William didn't leave the hospital until the doctors gave him clearance to take him home. He refused to let another miracle slip through his fingers. In those long hours spent in silence beside Max's bed, William finally understood what family felt like. Not by blood, not by name, but by love, loyalty, and shared pain. Once Max was discharged, William made a vow. One that wouldn't just change his life, but the lives of thousands more. He wouldn't stop with shelters. He wouldn't stop with food or blankets or temporary homes. He wanted to give these children everything he had been given, but had never truly appreciated: safety, opportunity, education, and dignity. He began funding schools under the MLT banner. Places where street children, orphans, and the abandoned could get the same level of education as those in elite institutions. No uniforms, no entrance exams, just the will to learn. Max, Lily, and Theo were enrolled in the first one. They came home every day with stories. About how they'd read poems aloud, How Lily had painted a picture that made the whole class clap. How Theo, quiet, shy Theo, stood up and recited the alphabet without missing a letter. William would sit with them in the evening, quietly listening, quietly healing. But the world outside wasn't always kind. Critics started whispering. Some accused William of using the children as a publicity stunt. Others claimed he was running from guilt or chasing redemption through charity. Online trolls emerged. Conspiracy theories formed. William didn't respond. Because every morning, when Theo smiled, when Lily sang, when Max asked for help with math, he knew the truth. But what no one saw coming was the letter. One evening, a plain envelope arrived at the shelter office. It had no return address. Just one word on the back: justice. Inside was a photograph. 3 children, bruised, dirty, terrified. And a man's hand gripping one of them by the shirt. The letter inside was simple. Your story isn't the only one. We were never rescued, we were forgotten. Save us. William froze. He showed the photo to no one, not even the kids. But something inside him shattered again. This time not in pain and rage. He immediately formed a task force, quietly, discreetly, former detectives, social workers, trusted reporters. He poured resources into finding whoever sent that letter. It didn't take long. A woman, hiding in an abandoned library in Detroit, came forward. She was the child in the photo. Now grown, she had watched William's story unfold on the news, and finally had hope that someone might listen. Her name was Janelle. She had been trafficked as a child, sold, beaten, forgotten, but she had survived. And now, she was ready to speak. William sat with her in person. No cameras. No entourage. Just him and her. She told him everything. Names, places, faces, all of it. It shook him to his core. He knew what had to be done. This wasn't just about homeless children anymore. This was about justice. He used the MLT fund to open a new Wing LT Justice Initiative. It would provide legal help, trauma therapy, and protection for children who had been victims of abuse, neglect, or trafficking. He hired top lawyers. He brought in the FBI. The cases exploded into the public eye. And when people saw what had really been happening in their own cities, their own neighborhoods, something shifted. No one could ignore it anymore. William testified before Congress. He told them about Max, Lily, and Theo. He told them about Janelle. He didn't ask for applause. He demanded change. Laws began shifting. Funding was redirected. For the first time in decades, serious infrastructure was put in place to find, protect, and rehabilitate lost children. But with that rise came risk. One evening, while walking back from a shelter visit, William's car was blocked by a black van. Men with masks stormed out. The driver tried to reverse, but it was too late. They smashed the windows, dragged William out, beat him, threatened him, warned him. "This isn't your war." One growled. "Back off, or next time we come for the kids." The next morning, William appeared at a press conference. Bruised, bandaged, but standing tall. He looked into the cameras and said, "You threatened the wrong man. I've already died once. What you're seeing now is the version of me that can't be broken." That clip went viral. The world stood still. Donations skyrocketed. Celebrities joined the cause. Government leaders called to offer support. And the man who once ruled from glass towers now walked among the broken. And built something no money ever could, a legacy. But he didn't do it alone. Because behind every decision, every headline, every risk were the 3 children who had once held his hand in a hospital and reminded him he was human. Max, Lily, Theo. Days after the attack, William Carter's face, swollen and bruised, appeared on screens across the country. But there was no anger in his expression. Only fire. The kind that couldn't be extinguished by fear. Behind him at the press conference stood Max, Lily and Theo, each holding a candle. Their small hands trembling. Their eyes firm. "These children," William began, his voice hoarse but steady, "are not a photo opportunity. They are not a symbol. They are my family. And if anyone thinks a few broken bones can stop this movement, they've clearly never seen what love looks like." The world listened. The world believed him, and the world responded. Within 48 hours, the MLT Fund received the largest donation in its history. $50 million from an anonymous donor. News agencies covered it like wildfire. Talk shows opened their broadcasts with clips from William's speech. Schools around the world held candle vigils. And in homes far from the spotlight, Children whispered his name as if he were more than a man. Something stronger. Something real. Something they could believe in. But every movement attracts darkness. And William knew it. Security was doubled. Locations became protected. But the shadows were shifting. The people who profited from child neglect, from trafficking, from systemic failure, they were watching, and they were angry. Still, William pressed on. He launched a hotline. He hired hundreds of staff to investigate child abuse reports. He opened homes not just for children, but for struggling single mothers, runaway teens, and kids aging out of foster care. The movement was no longer just saving children. It was rebuilding society from its most broken corners. Yet even as the world watched, William found himself craving silence. Moments when he could sit with Max and talk about football. When Lily would braid Theo's hair while humming old songs. When the four of them would fall asleep watching cartoons on the couch, wrapped in mismatched blankets, like any other family. In those quiet hours, he forgot the weight on his shoulders. Until the letter came. This time, it wasn't a cry for help. It was a death certificate. The name on it, Lily Carter. His heart stopped. He stared at the paper, cold with confusion and dread. The details matched her: age, orphan status, location. But the dates were off. It claimed she had died 2 years ago. William rushed to his legal team. They combed through public records, and what they found chilled him to the bone. Lily had been declared dead by the very system meant to protect her. She had once been placed in state custody after her mother passed. And then, she vanished from records. According to the files, one lawyer explained, she doesn't exist. She died in the system, lost, forgotten, buried in paperwork. William's stomach turned. She had been erased, not just her, but thousands. This wasn't just a failure. This was a cover-up. Names, lives, histories, deleted to clean the books, to avoid accountability, to lower foster system caseloads. Lily had slipped through the cracks. And survived. But how many hadn't? He didn't tell her. Not yet. Not until he understood the full scale. He dug deeper. And what he found shook every belief he had left about the system he thought he was reforming. A secret network of facilities. Underfunded. Unregulated. Where children labeled unplaceable were kept out of sight, starved, beaten, forgotten. They didn't die because they were sick. They died because no one cared. William wept that night, alone in his office. Then he stood, and made the hardest decision of his life. He would take the fight public, fully, exposing names, demanding arrests, and risking everything, including Lily. He gathered his team, prepared the files, scheduled a press conference. But before he could announce it, Lily disappeared. One moment she was in the garden, the next gone. Max screamed. Theo cried so hard he passed out. And William. He dropped to his knees in the dirt where she had last stood. A note was found, taped to the inside of the gate. You were warned. The world stopped. News stations speculated. Police launched investigations. But William knew, this wasn't a kidnapping for ransom. This was a message. They had taken Lily to break him. But they didn't know the fire they had just lit. William Carter disappeared from the media for 3 days. No tweets. No posts. No statements. People feared the worst. And then, on the morning of the 4th day he returned. Standing on the steps of Capitol Hill. Max and Theo beside him. His voice shook, but his eyes burned. They took her. He said, they took Lily. And if they think I'll back down because of it, they don't know what I've become. I'm not just a CEO anymore. I'm a father. And no one takes my child and walks away. He paused. I want her back. And I want every child like her back. He held up a black folder. Inside were the files, names, locations, proof. I am not just exposing this system, he said. I am dismantling it. The crowd erupted. The government was forced to respond. A multi-agency task force was launched. Federal raids began. And as Chapter 4 closes, somewhere in an unmarked facility lit by a flickering bulb, Lily Carter opens her eyes. Bruised, tired, but not broken. She whispers into the darkness. Papa's coming. 1 month after the press had exploded with William's story, the world had changed. For him. And for many others, he wasn't just a CEO anymore. He was a symbol of transformation, a man who had faced death, met angels in human form, and chose not to return to his old life of boardrooms and profits. He stepped into a new world. A world of giving, healing, and remembering the power of connection. The Hope Through Hands Foundation, launched in the names of the three people who saved him, Nora, Elias, and young Zane, had already set up healthcare camps in 5 cities. It wasn't charity for the sake of headlines. It was personal. Every hospital bed, every surgical kit, every tear wiped, it carried a piece of his promise. Nora became the medical head of the foundation. Her calm but firm leadership earned her the respect of thousands. She didn't want fame, she wanted futures to be saved like William's had been. Elias, the silent rock, took charge of logistics, always ensuring every life touched had dignity. Zane, the little boy who had cried for his mother while William lay unconscious, had now become the heart of the story. William kept his promise. Zane's education, therapy and future were all taken care of. But beyond money, he gave Zane something the boy had never had: a mentor. William taught him how to dream without fear. One evening, standing before a crowd of thousands in New York, William told the full story. His voice didn't tremble, but eyes in the crowd did. "I used to believe miracles were for fairy tales," he said. "Until I was dying and 3 strangers decided my life was worth saving. They didn't know I was rich. They just knew I was human." A pause, a moment, then silence. "I was saved by love, by courage, and by sacrifice. Today, I don't run a company, I run a mission. And this mission will outlive me." The crowd erupted. Tears. Cheers. Hearts opened. But the story didn't end there. The 5th chapter of his life was just beginning. Governments began collaborating. Billionaires once competing with him came forward with pledges. Hospitals with his foundation's name were now being planned across developing nations. William stood at the window of his office. No longer at the top of a tech firm, but at the heart of a movement. He looked out at the city, the same one where he used to measure success in digits and charts. Now, he measured it in lives. Nora walked in, holding Zane's drawing. It was a picture of the hospital. 3 people standing in front, and a man lying on a bed, smiling. Zane had written under it, "Miracles happen when love wakes up." William closed his eyes and smiled. He finally believed. 2 miracles don't always come wrapped in magic. They come in the form of people who refuse to walk away when you need them most. If this story touched you, inspired you, or reminded you of something real, subscribe the channel. Let's spread stories that change hearts. Thank you so much for giving your precious time.